And boom, at home because they can see you backstage. Give them a wave because they were able to fix this thing for me. So again, for those of you that weren't here yesterday, this is the profit. The more money you make and the more impact, you're right here in the thriving quadrant. And notice this arrow is pointing because you can never make too much money and you can never make too much impact. Notice that these arrows go on and these arrows go on because there's never enough. People say, Cole, how much money do you want to make? I say, never enough. And they're like, why? You're really that greedy? You're really that big of an arrogant capitalist? It's like, no, because there's so much need in the world. There's never enough money to fix it all. I can never be rich enough to make the type of impact in the world I actually really want to make. Give me Jeff Bezos money, I'll spend it all. People are like, he's too rich, you can't spend it. Are you kidding me? Start solving world problems. You'll spend Jeff Bezos money. I mean, I hear that a lot and I understand what they're saying. Lamborghinis just aren't expensive enough. Private jets just aren't expensive enough. Yeah, but maybe money isn't just meant to buy stuff. Maybe money's meant to impact. And so give me Jeff Bezos money and they say he could have enough money for 50 lifetimes. I guarantee I could spend his money in a year. I would just put it into countries, right? And within America and outward that need it. I would fund more schools. I would build schools for inner city kids that don't have access to quality education. I would provide better security so that we don't have any of these crazy shootings that happen at elementary school from these sick, demented people. I would invest in artificial technology that can identify a threat of somebody approaching at elementary school soon enough and automatically calls the cops. Like all kinds of stuff. I could spend trillions of dollars. Just give it to me. And so this is where my mind goes. And by the way, I love cars. I like wearing nice clothes, you know, when I wear clothes, which is rare because I'm normally just in board shorts and that's it. But still, guys, I love money because money gives you options. Write that down. Money doesn't make you a better person. It just gives you more options. Think about that, guys. More options for longer vacations, bigger vacations, more options for cars, bigger houses, but also more options for impact and giving back in a bigger way. So this is our quadrants, and this is what we want you guys to do. How did I arrive to this place in my life where this is what I wanted to do? I told you about that car accident, and thank you for finding this, Mike. I appreciate it. I know that I just had a picture of the car. Here it is. I showed this to you guys last night. And so let me back up a little bit and show you a couple of ways that I've made money matter real quick here. This is actually why I moved to Mexico, you guys. If you look at this picture right here, that's me up on the roof. What can you guys see right now? You see the actual slide? You see me? Okay. So this is me up here on the roof right there. Look, I'm right there. And this is why I moved to Mexico, is to build houses for homeless families with that nonprofit organization called Youth with a Mission. And fast forward to today, we have funded and participated in the build of 37 of these houses now. So what happens is a homeless family, that this particular house right here, it was a single dad with two boys, 8 and 3 or 8 and 4. And they were living in an abandoned bus. They were homeless. They found a bus. They moved it there. They were living in the bus. We moved the bus away. We built this and we gave them the keys of their house. If you look at the picture, this gentleman right here with the white hat, if you guys can see that on your screens at home, it was his house. He's the new owner. This little boy right here in the orange shirt is one of his sons. And this little guy right here with the hoodie on who's eating a lollipop was also one of his sons. So this man right here in the white shirt, this little boy right here, and this little guy right here got this home. And we do this little gifting ceremony at the end. Once the house is built and it looks like this and it's done, even though he's been in the house 100 times because they get to build their own house, which is cool, we shut the door and lock it. And we do this little gifting ceremony where we all stand in a circle, we bless it, we say a prayer, and we hand him the keys to his house. He goes to the door, sticks the keys in, unlocks it, and for the first time walks into his finished home. And in the key ceremony, he starts sobbing. He starts sobbing. And he told us that for this youngest boy right here, that this night would be the first night he ever slept under a roof. And that since his younger son had been born, he had been homeless his entire life. Guys, remember I moved to Mexico in 2010 through 11. And although in America the recession had quote unquote ended, the economics of the world didn't look good. So his dad right here had lost his job, couldn't afford to continue to pay for housing and food. So he bought, or I don't know if he bought the bus or found or what, but was living in an abandoned bus. So this is why I was down there. And fast forward, one of my for-purpose businesses now is we fund these things. And we actually, flip a house, give a house away. And these houses are only 20 by 16. They're smaller than most of your garages. But if you guys had the financial resources, you could afford to build 37 of these this month. Why not? This is another thing that I'm passionate about. This was in Southeast Asia. I lived there for almost 2 months, and I worked with a nonprofit based there. I won't tell you which country because I'm going to show you a couple of the kids, but I worked with women and children who are victims of human trafficking. If you guys thought that slavery was over, you're actually wrong. There are more human slaves on the planet today than has ever been ever. I don't know if you guys know that. It's almost a $40 billion a year industry. It's horrendous. And to get a little graphic on you, because I want you to hear me. I see a lot of you moving, but when I say something crazy, you all freeze. A lot of the drug cartels have realized they can only sell cocaine once, but they can sell a 10-year-old girl 12 times a day, 7 days a week. And they realized that sex trafficking is way more lucrative than cocaine or any other drugs. And instead of these people figuring out how to smuggle in drugs to sell, they're figuring out how to smuggle in children, which is called human trafficking, to then sell them to perverted, disgusting humans that should die terrible deaths where they are tortured for years. And it's a little graphic, but I can't even, as a dad of little girls, I can't even imagine. And these are two of the kids that we had saved. And even this young, they get sold into trafficking. And not all of them are put into the sex trade. A lot of them are put into slave labor. The children are sold and they're rolling cigarettes with their hands, or they're rolling newspapers and putting rubber bands around them. They're doing basic manual labor. That's actually, thank Jesus, where the majority of them go, is to slave. Well, that's not good, but I would rather have these little beautiful girls be rolling cigarettes than having torturous things done to them. We have saved, at this time when I was there in those 2 months, we saved 128 girls that were in a really bad spot. And so this is something that I got to pay and to participate in. This is what Making Money Matters looks like for me. This is in Africa, and this is a clean water project. If you look to the bottom, you'll see that there's this cement wall, and then down there's this pipe. This water was there. This is not a well. It's a water filtration system. The water is poisonous, and you cannot drink it. And what comes out the bottom there is drinkable water. And as you see these people celebrating right here, guys, do you know why they're celebrating? Because this is the first time in their lives they've ever had access to clean water in their own village. In the culture of this part of Africa, it's the women and children's role in their villages to carry in the water. The jugs that they carry are about 5 gallons. That's about 45 pounds of weight that they carry on their shoulders and heads every day because they cannot survive without water, oftentimes having to walk 5 or more miles each direction. This is the first time they've ever had water. When's the last time you or I celebrated having water? And so this is something that we've been able to participate in as well. And so what my wife and I fight for are human rights. We're passionate about civil rights as well, but this is a little different. Civil rights is like, rights to votes, things like that. Human rights is, I believe that everybody should have access to clean water. That's a human right. I believe that all human beings should be free. That's a human right. I believe that homelessness shouldn't exist. I have a very soft spot for homeless people. That's why yesterday I was racing a scooter downtown LA with a homeless guy. I spent 30 minutes with him, and I didn't drink coffee, but I hung with him while he had his coffee. And so what my wife and I do is we fight against injustice. We fight against injustice for what we believe are people's fundamental human rights. It's your right to be free. It is your right to have a roof over your head. Pictures that I'm not showing you, we're huge contributors to Pencils of Promise that build schools for people. You have a right to education, all of that stuff. And guys, for those of us that grew up in the faith-based community like myself, I grew up in the church. I'm a Christian, and if that offends you, that's your problem. I assume as adults, we can all respect each other's viewpoints, whether we share them or, share different viewpoints. We can respect each other. That being said, those of us that grow up in the Christian faith are taught to not brag or boast about when we're being generous. It says to give with your right hand without the left hand knowing. And sometimes people of that faith or other faith that have similar mindsets towards that, when I talk about making money matter and being public about the things you're doing, some people are like, Cole, you're not supposed to do that. So for any of you, let me be very quick to that topic. What I do with my personal money, what my wife and I do with our personal money, I don't share with anybody. This is the stuff that my company does as a for-purpose organization. So for any of you that are a little conflicted, like, Cole, this just seems weird that you're doing this stuff and telling us all about it, I always share the impact my companies make in the world because I want to inspire other people to run their companies in the same way. If you guys have ever heard of Tom's Shoes, for every pair of shoes they sold, they give a pair away. I talk about that in my TED Talk or TEDx Talk. And so when we're looking at Tom's Shoes, Blake Makowski, the founder, is estimated to be worth almost $400 million. Tom's Shoes, for every pair of shoes they sold, they gave a pair away. That's very public, but we don't know what Blake Makowski does with his personal finances, if that makes sense. And so what my wife and I do is the impact our companies make. It's all over the website. It's all over the branding. It's who we are very publicly. And that's what my company does. Then after my company does that, it pays my wife and I to run it. It's already made the impact, pays its taxes, pays our employees. My wife and I, this is what entrepreneurs, we always get paid last. It pays its various bills, and then what's left is ours. With what my wife and I get to take home, we then are charitable and do our own thing. And that's between my wife, myself, and God. We don't tell anybody about those. So for those of you that are like, Cole, I love this for purpose thing, but like, I couldn't do it. Don't share with people what you're doing privately, but very publicly tell the world that your businesses are making the world a better place. You guys got that? Yeah? All right. Oh, thanks, Keon. And so he says, anybody who got off is missing out. I appreciate that. Thank you for not being afraid to own your Christianity. You know, I appreciate that, Sharon. And here's where I stand. Not that this has anything to do with what you've paid to have me tell you, but it's like, dude, I'll go there. I'm gonna go a little bit deeper in my faith and where I stand. Just for you guys for a second. You didn't ask for it, but you're getting it anyway. So if you don't want to hear this, mute your computer for 90 seconds. But I do not consider myself a religious person, yet I just stood up here and told you guys I am a Christian. So what's the difference? Well, growing up, I won't give you too much of the backstory, but I looked at people who called themselves Christian who I couldn't associate with. The KKK calls themselves Christians and use the same Bible I read to justify their hate crimes. There are men and women that go to abortion clinics and hold signs that are derogatory and horrible to the women that are making that decision. I've seen people who call themselves Christians who go to gay rallies and hold signs that says God hates fags. That's a hate language. That's a hate crime. So I hesitate to call myself a Christian because I don't want to be batched into you assuming that I have a similar belief to them. So what I decided to do in my own faith, nobody taught me to do this. This was just out of desperation of trying to figure out what man I would grow up to be, is I looked at language. And in the English language, the word is Christian. The root word is Christ. The suffix is IAN. And if you go back to grammar school, IAN means to be of. I'm Californian because I'm from California. So to be Christian means to be of Christ. So you know what I did? I read the 4 Gospels of the Bible, which for those of you that are agnostic or atheists, and this is offending you, whatever, you read those 4 books and it's different people's accounts, first-person accounts of what Jesus did during his ministry. And you know what I saw? I saw a dude that did the exact opposite of what a lot of the religious leaders are preaching to do today. I saw a dude that in his time was hanging out with lepers who were culturally at that time supposed to be shunned and in leper colonies and not allowed to associate with the main massive population. I saw a dude that was hanging out with them. There's a story of the woman at the well. History tells us that she was a prostitute. You're not even supposed to talk to them. And he ministered to her and he gave her encouragement. And so what I saw was a dude that was hanging out with the people that needed love the most. He wasn't just sitting around in the synagogues hanging out with the Pharisees. As a matter of fact, if you look at anything that Jesus did, he got pissed at the religious people of his time and condemned the behavior of the Pharisees like crazy. So I consider the Pharisees the religious types that made like 1,000 rules beyond the 10 commandments to make sure that you didn't break one of those, to really make sure you didn't break one of the 10 commandments. And they beat people up with their religious philosophies when at the root of it, it's supposed to be love God and love your neighbor as yourself. If I have to summarize what I've interpreted the Bible to mean to me, it's love God, love your neighbor, and have a ton of fun. Enjoy your life. And so for me, that's why, to Sharon's comment of why unapologetically say I'm a Christian, it's like, hey, listen, I'm just trying to love people who society has decided shouldn't be loved. And that's what I think Christ would do if he was here today. I think if the Bible was being written today, that he would go to these gay rallies where people are holding signs that says God hates fags, and he would tell them to stop. And I think he would go to the people who are being hated on, and he would hug them and love them and say, I love you equally, to the people who are holding those signs. And that's what I believe. So, and this is credit to my parents too. I was just raised with parents who loved everybody equally, regardless of who they loved, what their skin color was. And I get criticized by the Christian. I have no idea why we're talking about this, by the way, but I get criticized by the Christian community for that, because we're supposed to call out sin and this and that. It's like, listen, I'm not here to judge somebody else's sin. Take the plank out of my own eye before I talk to someone about theirs, right? I'm just called to love my neighbor as myself. And it doesn't say love the neighbor as yourself, as long as they share your same skin pigmentation, as long as they love the opposite sex. And as long as it doesn't say that. It says love your neighbor. And guess what my neighbors are? They're minorities. They're people of other faith. They are people in the LGBT community. They are everybody's my neighbor. So, dude, I got nothing but love for all of you. Even if you think I'm the biggest a-hole in the world to talk about this on a public platform, got nothing but love for you too. Okay, so that being said, that was my upbringing. That's what I was rooted in. I want to be rich at the same time, but I have this conflict because the Bible says what? It's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than it is for a camel to get through the eye of a needle. So I talked to some pastors about that, because it's like, guys, I want to get freaking rich. I want to have Lambos unapologetically as I drive to church, as I said last night, because I bought the damn building for my pastor. Oh, I say damn and maybe some worse words when I'm not on stage, right? Just to be transparent. Right? Anyway, and so I talked to these pastors, and it's interesting how, and I won't go any deeper into this because I don't want to offend people, but a lot of text from all religious books are really taken out of context. And so if you read that entire thing real quick, because I want to address that for those of you that are in the faith-based community, we'll get back to some Q&A and we'll move on. Cole, you say you want to get rich, but Bible says it's harder for a rich man to get into heaven than it is for a camel to get through an eye of a needle. So watch this. I talked to a pastor who I respect, who I love, and I said, what does this mean? And he said, it's harder for, not impossible. The Bible does not say you cannot be rich. In fact, I've heard that the Bible talks more about money, uses the word money more than it even uses the word love or something like that. But it doesn't say you can't be. It just says it's harder. And when you read the entire conversation, I'm going to give you this back context real quick and we'll move on. There's a young man that sees Jesus walking through a crowd. He's a baller in those times, business owner, it appears, and says, how do I get into heaven? And the context is he wants to buy his way in. Jesus sees right through it and basically says, sell everything you own. Get rid of all of it. Give it all away. And then you'll get into heaven. And then the man left discouraged. And Jesus sees that and elbows his apostles and says, see that? It's harder for rich men to get into heaven than it is for a camel to get through an eye of a needle. And if you understand the context, it's about where that guy's heart was. It wasn't his individual wealth. It was that the wealth was his priority. And to test him, Jesus said, you want heaven? Sell all your wealth, get rid of it. And the guy walked away and wouldn't. And so Jesus pointed out that. So just so you all know, with all the research I've done, and I'm really paraphrasing because I want to move on, you are allowed to pursue wealth if you own it. It doesn't own you. And I guarantee you, I can't guarantee this, but I'm pretty confident that when I get to heaven and God sits down with me and audits what I did with my financial blessings while I was alive, I guarantee you there's some things that he'll be disappointed with. But for the majority of things, I think he'll be glad with what I did with it. So that being said, that's what I did. This has nothing to do with real estate or any of it. And this car accident is what put me there. So this is the car accident that I got in, as you guys know. This was a picture I didn't show you yesterday. I actually got ejected. Can you put me on the camera, you guys? I got ejected out of the back. I was wearing my seatbelt, but if you guys know anything about seatbelts, they go across your front for frontal impact. If I hit a tree or another car and my body goes forward, the seatbelt holds me. But what holds you from going backwards? Well, it's the seat itself. And because, as you can see, this car, because the accident was so bad, the seat itself broke flat. And I shot out from this seat right here, out the back window. And I've got a bunch of pictures, but if you look where I was sitting, my seatbelt's actually still buckled. So because my body went backwards, my seatbelt stayed buckled. I slipped out from underneath it, went out this window right here at 80 miles an hour. And as you already heard the story, I had to be lifted in a helicopter to the hospital. I was not supposed to survive. I had a traumatic brain injury called a subdural hematoma. My brain was bleeding inside of my skull. I still have a dark spot on my brain to this day. I do deal with frequent headaches, but other than that, everything else completely healed. Praise God. And so the one part of the story I didn't tell you was I was not the driver. My best friend in the world, Steve, was driving the car, and Matt was in the passenger seat, my other best friend. It was the three of us. Matt got rushed to a hospital in an ambulance. Steve and I got rushed to the hospital in the helicopter. And since I went too long, I'll abbreviate this story by saying that I survived that accident and Steve did not. So Steve was the driver of this car, my best friend in the world, like a brother to me. And the police were, I don't remember this accident because of my brain injury, but the police told us that the eyewitnesses said that we were totally driving like we're supposed to, and we were in the fast lane, and it was a 2-lane highway, and somebody in the slow lane didn't check their blind spot and turned into us and made the back left of their car hit the front right of our car, which caused us to flip. They pulled over. The eyewitnesses say that the person that caused the accident came next to my body, kneeled down next to me, got in their car and left. Because obviously I was in bad shape. So they realized, oh my gosh, this guy's going to die. Because I was bleeding out of my eyes, my nose, my ears, my mouth. I had lost a lot of skin. I had to be treated almost as a burn patient because of how much skin I lost hitting the pavement at 80 miles an hour. It looked more like burns than anything else. And so they come up to this 21-year-old kid who's bleeding out on the side of the highway from an accident they caused. What do? Got in their car and left. Bottom line is, that's what caused the accident. Steve was also ejected, and he and I get rushed to the hospital in a helicopter. He did not survive. I did. I just lost the most important person in my life other than my immediate family at 21 years old. Matt had survived with me. You guys leaving? Okay. Oh. Thank you. All right. Well, I'll call you when I get to the hospital hospital. I'm not going to the hospital. When I get to the hotel, Dom, give him my room number. You guys can come up again a little bit. I'm going to treat you guys to a little dinner tonight. So I wake up in the hospital. It sucks. I move in with my parents. Matt and I were the only survivors. Fast forward, guys, and I've gone way too long because I talked about Christianity and religion because that's what you paid for at a real estate event to learn, right? Jesse, no, they never found the car. And so Matt and I became inseparable. At about 2 months after the accident, Matt decided to take me dirt bike riding because I had just gotten out of my wheelchair and on the crutches. So although my legs didn't work great, you can obviously sit on a motorcycle. Fast forward, as we were out in the desert doing exactly what we're supposed to do, we both fell into an abandoned mine shaft. This was 67 days after Steve had passed away. And so 67 days after I was lying on the side of the pavement dying, I had gotten out of my wheelchair and onto crutches. To celebrate that, Matt's like, let's go ride dirt bikes. We both fell into an abandoned mine shaft. Movies show mine shafts as like being dug into the side of a hill, but most are actually just dug straight down, and then they go every direction to try to find the gold or the silver. As I was falling in, I was able to reach out and grab the edge of the hole and hold onto a bush about the size of a basketball and just hang there like Indiana Jones, just legs dangling, looking straight down into blackness. And remember, my legs still hardly worked. So I was able to pull myself out, roll out of the hole, call 911. Fast forward, the police arrive, the firefighters arrive, the search and rescue units arrive. They go down to get Matt. It took a long time, a lot of technical difficulties. Finally, after something like 6 or 7 hours, the police chaplain pulled us aside. And so this is the chaplain of the police department. It was me, my parents, Steve's mom and dad, who had just lost their son 67 days earlier, Matt's mom and dad, and my youth pastor, Brian. And this police chaplain said, as you guys know, this is an abandoned mine shaft. And he said, sorry, this is just, it's funny because I've told this story 1,000 times, but when you haven't told it in a while. He said, as you guys know, this is an abandoned mine shaft. And he said, the problem with mine shafts like this is although there's one hole in, they canal 100 different directions looking for silver. And there are often times when people fall into mine shafts, we never find them again. They're just a missing person. And he said, the good news is we found Matt. And you guys, I just got like this rush of like relief. And he said, the bad news is this is the deepest mine shaft I've ever seen in my life. It's 780 feet deep. Matt fell all the way to the bottom and did not survive. They're retrieving him now, and he'll be back up to the service in about an hour. And I almost fainted. Steve, Matt, and I were in this car. We got into an accident on September 9th. Steve passed away on September 10th. Fast forward to November 14th. So September 10th, Matt and I said goodbye to Steve. November 14th, Matt died in the mine shaft. I was in this car accident with Matt and Steve. I fell into the mine shaft with Matt. Any of you tonight, if you got a phone call that your two best friends, the two people that matter more than you, I was single at the time, like other than my mom, dad, sisters, like these two people meant more to me than any other humans. And if you got that call tonight that they died, you would be destroyed. But for me, I was in the accidents with them, and I'm the only one that survived. So not only do I have insane grief, I have insane soul-crushing guilt. And I made some poor decisions. I had been prescribed morphine pills to recover from my car accident with Steve, and as soon as the pain was tolerable, I stopped taking it because I wasn't a fan of like heavy narcotic medicine. I didn't like the way it made me feel, whatever. But they overprescribed. I had a lot of pills left. So the day after Matt had passed, it's now November 15th, I started taking more morphine than I was supposed to. I don't remember the amounts, but if I was supposed to take one every 8 hours, I like took 3 at a time. And then I continued to do this. And then I realized that if I drank alcohol with the morphine, I could knock myself out. And I started taking like 5 or 6 pills, drinking straight hard alcohol. I would fall asleep at like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I wouldn't wake up till like 11 o'clock the next day. And I wasn't telling anyone I was doing this. And my parents knew that I was in my room because I remember I was living at my parents' house at this time after my accident. They just assumed I was just being alone, and they were just giving me space. They didn't know what I was doing up there. They didn't know that I was knocking myself out at 4 and sleeping until 11. They were just giving me my space to grieve. And I did this for a month. And I made it until December 18th, and I had my aha moment. I had just taken more pills than I had ever tried before, and I was getting ready to drink straight hard alcohol and knock myself out. And I realized in that moment, I'm going to take one pill too many one of these times pretty soon, and I'm going to fall asleep and not wake up. They're going to find me, and it'll be an accidental overdose. I will have taken 9 morphines and drank 6 ounces of hard alcohol, starved my heart, fell asleep, and never woke up. And I thought about that reality. And to be totally honest, at first it seemed like a better option. And I wasn't suicidal. I didn't write a note. But as I thought about that, because I wasn't trying to kill myself, I was just being reckless and hurt. But when I realized the direction I was going, and it actually hit me like, oh, I'm going to die. At first I was like, oh, actually, that's not that bad. And then I immediately thought, what a selfish piece of crap I am. Steve and Matt are gone and never coming back. And now I'm just going to throw my life away. Like, they would do anything for another day. And I don't know why they're gone and I'm here, but now I'm just going to kill myself accidentally. So I went to the bathroom, poured the pills in the toilet, flushed them, stopped drinking, and didn't have another sip of alcohol for almost 3 years from that moment. Put my life back together. And in that moment, as I was still sober because I was starting to digest the handful of pills I'd just taken and I didn't drink the alcohol yet, but in that window, I just looked up and I started talking to God, and I started talking to Steve and Matt. By the way, I was very angry at God. I was blaming him for all of it. Why didn't you stop this? Why didn't you save their lives? Why? And so I looked up and I apologized to God, and I started talking to Steve and Matt, and I said, you guys will not be forgotten. And I said, I don't know why you only got 21 years of life and I've got more time. I don't know how much time I've got. And I said, but with however much more time God gave me that you didn't get, I am going to use it, and I'm going to make it matter. And I'm going to do things with my life big enough so that when I get to see you in heaven again, and I will see them again, and when I'm face to face with my Creator, I'm going to be able to point at my life, and I'm going to say I used every gift, every opportunity, every moment, everything you gave me. I left it all down there. I didn't have a talent unused. I didn't have a moment that wasn't capitalized on. God, with what you gave me, I used it all. And when that day comes that I get to meet Steve and Matt, I want to have lived a life that's big enough for the three of us. So why did I go from a guy who wanted to be a firefighter, which is a great career, by the way, I'm not knocking it, but a firefighter that aspired to someday make $100,000 a year? That was my goal. In my early 20s, I was like, if I work enough overtime and promote enough, within 10 years, I can probably be making $100,000. It was $42,000 a year as your starting salary. In that moment, something changed in me. And why I've made millions of dollars and why I run events like this and why I do what I do, the genesis is because I promised Matt and Steve I would. And there's days, no offense, guys, events suck. Like getting you guys to buy a $49 ticket is borderline freaking impossible. I don't know what the hell. It's so cheap, right? And we're, if I do say so myself, a pretty incredible lineup. And it's like pulling teeth, like I'm begging you guys. And so, but then the event comes and I love it. Just to be totally transparent, I hate everything about events until they start. Why do I put myself through the torture? And any of you that are doing events, especially during COVID, you already know what I'm talking about. Because I promised Steve and Matt I would. And why is no amount of money enough? Because there's more broken stuff in the world than any amount of money can solve. So why do I have no dollar amount on how much I want? Because you can never give me enough money to solve the world's needs, right? But what if every business on the planet was for a purpose? Now you're starting to see my big vision. What if every business on the planet gave back? Now we'd start to see the world's problems being solved. And so that's who I am, and that's where I come from. And that's why I host events like this, and that's why it's so important for me to teach financial literacy, because I want you guys to be unapologetically wealthy. And I want you to be proud of your Lamborghinis. I don't even own a Lambo, by the way, but I'm just using it as an example. Like, I want you to be proud of your ridiculous monetary possessions, because they don't own you. You own them. And proportionately, you're giving back 10x of what those toys cost you. I'll be a little transparent. I've never said this from stage before. Yeah, I do have an R8. Okay. So I don't have a Lambo, but I have a car with a Lambo motor in it. It's a little different. But let me just be totally transparent with you for a second. And this is maybe a justification, and this is maybe the thing that God will slap me on my wrist for justifying. But here's the way I look at my life and my finances. I live in a beautiful multi-million-dollar home. The average family in America makes $58,000 a year. The average home in America is $174,000. So what that tells me is the average human in America buys a house that is 3 times more than they make. Does that make sense? So if they make, and this is an average, and we're not talking like right here in LA is very different, but as an average in this country, the average family makes $58,000 a year and buys a $174,000 house. So they're buying something that is 3 times their annual salary. Without sounding arrogant, my house, I made more than $1 million that year, more than what I paid for my house. So who's spending more? The person that spends 3 times their annual income, or the person that spent 75% of their annual income? Every car I own, and some of them are worth 6 figures. The average American makes $58,000 a year. The average car in America costs $33,000. So the average American spends about 60 to 70% of their annual income on their car. I make more money every single month than any one of my cars costs. So when you really look at it into the end of the day, most people for their material possessions spend almost every dollar they own. And without sounding like a dick, I spend like this much of my money on my toys. So why I unapologetically have a few vehicles and a beautiful house and do what I do is because proportionate to the money I give back and the impact I'm making, it's not that big of a deal. So I walk around saying, hey, you know what? Compared dollar for dollar to most people, I'm living like a peasant. And without sounding ridiculous, I could have a lot bigger houses and nicer cars than I own. I just don't need them. I got what I want and I'm happy. And that's how I think we should all treat our wealth. So this is Matt, or not Matt, sorry. Mike, will you put this on the screen? I want to show you guys. This is Matt and Steve. This is the last picture we took together. This is actually in my car. I'm driving it like 70 miles an hour going down the freeway, which is why we thought we were so funny. Matt is in my passenger seat. Steve's in the back seat. This is the last picture we took together. This picture was taken like September 5th. The guy in the middle there, that's Steve. he didn't even know that he had 5 days left to live. And Matt didn't even know that he had 73 days left to live. Do you know what we thought? We thought we were going to spend the rest of our lives together. We thought we'd buy houses right next to each other. Our wives would be best friends. Our kids would be best friends. We were going to literally spend the rest of our lives together. We had it all planned out. And I made those two guys a promise. And that's obviously me with hair. You might not recognize me on the right. But so that's all I wanted to share tonight, you guys, is, you know, we made you guys an offer to invest in something that's $10,000. And, you know, you might be like, oh, they're just like everybody else. Guys, I want you to know, no offense to your 10 grand. We don't need it. I'm going to do a deal with Wags this month that's going to pay me $300,000 cash this month. And that's a new thing. That's beyond my existing businesses and stuff. No offense. It's not about your 10 grand. I want you to commit so we can help you. And I'm not here to remind you about the applications and stuff. It's just like, I don't want you to think that myself, Dan, or any of the team that's here, that we're just those next guys running an event to try to get your money or whatever it is. Hell no. That is so small. I'm not running events to try to get your money. That's so small. I'm running events to try to equip you with the abilities to make stupid amounts of money and give back. Like, my goal is way beyond your money. My goal is to get you in front of the people, information, and resources you need to become the next multimillionaire that freaking changes the world and ends poverty in a certain area of the world, or whatever it is you're passionate about. So believe me when I say this, you know, we're all doing fine. We just want you to have the chance to come with us where we're going. And so this is Steve and Matt, like I said, behind me here on this wall, and they're why I'm here tonight doing what I'm doing with this group. So I promised you guys I would do Q&A. And then I went into the story, and now it feels a little awkward to like transition back to talking about the difference between hard money and private money. Shoot. And I feel bad for the AV guys behind the wall. What do I do, guys? What do I do right now? Yeah, but I'm going to do that tomorrow anyway. What do I do, Matt Kelly? Let me read this. Flip in here. All right, let's do this. I don't know, because I can only see like this room has 230, this one has 90-something, this, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7. I have no idea. Yeah, this is what we're going to do, guys. This is what we're going to do. Alon wants to see my daughters. They're not here right now. They're back at the hotel, bro. No. So just to be clear, I'm just going to go back to my hotel room and chill. I could do this for hours. The problem is there's 5 guys running the show still behind the wall, and I feel bad for them. I could do this on my laptop. You what? Oh, they said it looked like Tom Cruise. Whatever. Let's do this, you guys. Let's do this. I got an idea. In 1 hour, I'll be back in my hotel room. I'm going to work with Josh to send out an email, and I will fire up a Zoom link in my hotel room. God, but that's so late for those either around the world. Stupid idea. Just kidding, because I forget I'm in Pacific time. Well, I don't need to go to bed. I'm fired up. All right, here's what we'll do. Guys, VIP will start tomorrow at 9:15 and go to 9:50. During the lunch break tomorrow, I will not take a lunch break, and I will do Q&A then. That's what we will do. So when the last speaker speaks and we excuse you for lunch, instead of just letting music play for those entire 45 straight minutes, I will sit here and answer your guys' questions. So maybe ahead of time, if there are questions that you have that you would like me to answer, you can like pack a lunch, or you'll pack it. You're probably at your house, but you know what I'm saying? Like, be ready to eat while we're together. I would say bring a beer, but that might be too early for you to then stick through the rest. I forgot to drink my beer. That's what we'll do. So VIP Q&A, 9:15 to 9:50. General session starts at 10. And when we go on a break around 12:31, whatever time the break is, I don't know the schedule off the top of my head. When that lunch break comes, I will be here in this chair answering all your questions then. And then at the end of tomorrow, I'll do it if there's any more questions as well. So Lisa says, we love you. You need a break. You so deserve it. Honestly, this is what I love to do. I think I could do this forever without a break. Just trying to get you guys to think differently about life, you know? So we'll wrap it up there. And I'll give you a thing that I learned from Ed Milet to think about as we close this night out. I had Ed Milet speak at one of my Thrive events, and I'll never forget it. I was backstage at that event, and Ed was out on center stage, and there's speakers backstage so we can hear what's happening. And I was walking around because when I'm at these events, I'm facilitating. I'm running around like crazy trying to make sure everything happens. Someone says, do you reply to messages on IG? I do my best. I do get a lot of messages on IG. If you're not following me or whatever, just find me at Cole Hatter. Shoot me a DM and I'll do my best. And I'll see that. But so here we go. Ed Milet told this story. And so all credit to Ed. This is his story, but I loved it. And here's what he said. He said, he also is a Christian like me. So we believe that when we die, we go to heaven. Okay. And again, whatever yours are, that's your belief system. And Ed said that he knows he's going to go to heaven, and he likes to tell himself this story. This isn't factual or ground in, Christian theology. This is a fun game that he plays with himself. And so he says, when I get to heaven, I imagine that I'm going to meet God. God's going to give me a hug. He's going to say, good work, my good and faithful servant, and you I'm well pleased, the whole deal. And then Ed says that he likes to pretend that in that moment, God is going to introduce Ed to somebody else. And standing next to God would be the version of Ed that God intended him to be. And so let me change this to the first person for you. Without putting my religious views on you, just play along with this. Pretend that when you pass, you do go to a place called heaven and you do meet something like a God. And that God says, good job, you lived a great life. And now watch this. As you're talking to God, God says, hey, this is the version of you I intended you to be. This is the you that used all your gifts, all your skills, all your talents, wasn't afraid to try, and played all out. This is what you could have been. And Ed said when he meets that version of himself, he hopes it's not a stranger. He hopes an identical twin. And I heard that, and I was backstage, and it just hit me so hard. I can't think of a bigger regret than getting to heaven and meeting the version of me I could have been and not even recognizing what I should have been because I played so small. So that was Ed's story. All credit to Ed. But I personalized that, and I was like, oh my gosh, like what if this guy had more hair? Like what if he was ripped? What if he was a better husband, a better father? What if he made an impact that I didn't like? What if he loved more people and was loved by more people? I want to be staring at a freaking mirror when I see the version that God made me to be. And even if this isn't within your belief system, if that happened to you and you had a chance to see yourself, give me a wave if you would want to be looking at a mirror too. Yeah, right on. All right. So with that, let's go ahead and Dwayne says, mind blown. Levi says, dude, preach. Yeah. I mean, this is what I'm passionate about, guys. I don't normally talk like this. I'm normally teaching how to raise capital or something. Because I think that a lot of times when people have conversations like this and then don't teach you a methodology of generating money, that just the motivation wears off. I want to give you guys skills to actually change your life. So I think there's a balance, and we'll end there. We'll end there tonight, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. And as this ends, there are a lot of temptations right now to go turn on a TV, go start a movie, go catch up with sports, go talk to somebody. Maybe just take 1 or 2 minutes right now. And I'm not trying to get woo-woo on you, but maybe just take 1 or 2 minutes right now and imagine what could be. Imagine, okay, if I played all out, what could that look like? If I didn't believe that lie that my 6th grade teacher told me about I would never amount to anything, if I stopped believing that lie, what could I be? If I didn't listen to my ex-significant partner, my ex-wife, my ex-husband, who told me that I'm a loser, a piece of crap, that I'm totally a waste of space, if I didn't believe that ex, who could I possibly be? And just think about that for a second, and then go on with your evenings. But just take a second thinking about if you got to meet the version that God intended, how different would that be? And then be grateful that you have still time to close that gap and be as close to your highest potential you possibly can be. So, love you all. See that VIPs at 9:15. Rest of y'all see at 10 a.m. I appreciate you all so much. I love you. God bless.